webinar series. Uh, Chitrakshi, we ready to start?
So wait, I'm just people are coming. Yes, so you can start.
Thank you, Chitrakshi. First of all, thank you, everyone, for making time for this webinar. Friends and colleagues, coming as it does in the wake of a grave tragedy in Uttarkashi in Uttarakhand, this webinar, which we called Placekeeping in India's Hill States, Managing Development Amidst Climate Change, assumes a very special significance. It tells us loudly to change our ways of doing things in face of lurking threats and daunting challenges. That we cannot ignore nature, that we must reckon with the limits of carrying capacity of places and systems, that development must be redefined in the context of ecological, social, and cultural sustainability. That good planning must replace chaotic and unbridled growth, and responsible and accountable governance must go beyond short term personal gains. We must know that life and nature are both very precious. So that's the kind of message I thought was very important to remember what happened just 3 days ago. Well, I'm delighted and consider it my very special privilege to welcome you to the 131st episode in the webinar series that INHAF is organizing for the past few years. It's appropriately titled Rethinking City. As many of you already know, we have had over 550 experts, professionals, specialists, and community groups from all over the world presenting their views, perspectives, and solutions on something like 30 to 40 important urban themes. We've discussed governance and finance and mobility, climate change, infrastructure, slums, housing, rivers, water, whatever. While on the subject of this webinar, I also want to use this opportunity to tell a little bit more about what we're doing in the next 2 or 3 months. And the good news is that we are presenting some 20 new webinars in coming few months. This includes a series of 6 webinars on an incredibly versatile slum upgrading program in Orissa called the Jaga Mission. The program is showing ways to deal with the slum problem creatively. What's happening in big cities and small towns of Orissa had such potential for adoption and replication in other cities of the country and even the region that we have named the series Slums Are Solvable. And I also must add that it's so important that we have 6 partners to co-host this webinars. That includes UN Habitat and Cities Alliance. The second set of 5 webinars are with CityNet, CANSA, that is Climate Action Network in South Asia, and All India Institute of Disaster Management, and which starts on 19th August in 10 modules. This webinar series will focus on the climate change and share what big cities like of Asia such as Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, Seoul, Yokohama, and Makati are doing to address the formidable climate challenge they are facing. And we have also started a new series under which we are focusing on the development challenges of cities of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Orissa. That said, let me tell you very briefly why we have been doing this webinars for so long. Now it's about 4 years. What are our objectives? What do we hope to achieve? The theme, the concern, and the focus is India's daunting urban challenge. The webinars that we have put together are asking many questions, such as, are we really ready to absorb properly over 350 million people who would be in the cities in 25 more years' time by 2050? Are we ready to build in the coming 25 years more than what we have constructed already in the past 70 years? Houses, offices, schools, roads, bridges, are we ready? The climate threat has a special connect with urbanization and cities. How are we preparing for it? Will slums disappear in the coming 15, 20 years? They estimate that meeting the urban infrastructure deficit in 15 years, US dollars 680 billion is required. And compare that to what happened under JNNURM. Under JNNURM, one of the better conceived urban infrastructure investment programs, the country could manage spending just $14 billion in 10 years. It took 10 years to do 15 to $14 billion. And we're talking about $680 billion in 15 to 20 years' time. Do we have the required resources and institutional capacity to upgrade infrastructure investment at the required level? So these are the kind of questions we have been asking through this webinars. And this webinar series, therefore, is to take the urban challenge to people. It is based on the conviction that India's urban challenge is very formidable and meeting it is not possible by any single agency or institution. Meeting the urban challenge in a manner which delivers good, livable cities requires a broader societal partnership, and all actors and stakeholders will need to contribute. And what we are doing is a very small part of the effort to building a wider societal partnership. And we are not asking the question if we are succeeding. And I'm very frank. It's a massive task. And what is important is to be doing it imaginatively and creatively. So with this longish introduction about the webinar series as to what we are doing and why we are doing, I hand this over to my colleague and friend, Dr. Anjali Mohan, and a remarkably resourceful panel we have been able to put together. Anjali, but before you start that, let me introduce you very briefly. Just take a few minutes. You don't require introduction. Dr. Mohan is a partner at Integrated Design at Bangalore, where she leads urban planning projects as well as initiative at the intersection of planning, participation, development, and environment. Dr. Mohan, I don't call her Dr. Mohan. Anjali is involved extensively in action research in Bhopal, Ranchi, Dharwad, Delhi, and Bangalore to evolve city and neighborhood scale climate change responsive planning frameworks that focus on resilient and livable cities. And a personal note, she managed INHAF in its early years and nurtured it a strong design. What INHAF is now and doing is mainly because what she did when she was looking after it. So, Anjali, thank you very much for making time and thank you very much for building INHAF. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirti. INHAF today is because of a lot of efforts from you who has stuck there and been there holding fort for a very, very long time. But moving on, I am very happy to be moderating this panel today. And for me, it's more a labor of love. I am doing it for um, because my roots are in Simla. I have grown up there. They continue to be in Simla, though I'm now, for all practical purposes, based in Bangalore. I belong to the town. I've grown up there. I've seen its transitions. So for me, this, when Kirti approached me, I was like very happy to take it on. And I said, yes, I would be like really love to be a part of these conversations. So just to kind of take the conversation further, first of all, thank you very much to all the five panelists, Mr. Sanan, my friend Pratibha Chauhan, also a colleague today on this panel, Mr. Avay Shukla, Tikender, whom we have met earlier and been part of different panels, and Mr. Nandu Negi. Thank you so much for taking out your time and coming on to this very important discussion. My background to this particular webinar has also been shared, which I had put together. But very quickly, what I would like to say is that for today's conversations, what I would like to, I've divided the conversation um, into two parts. Both are intrinsically connected. What I would like to do is that I would like my panelists to speak to pressures which are externally imposed on hill stations. Of course, many of them hill stations take them on internally also, but this would be largely the extrinsic pressures where we speak to large infrastructure, to the pressures of tourism, to the pressures of also the built fabric expansion as a result of tourism. So these are some of the pressures that most hill stations across the country are facing. As in other urban areas, the hill stations are no exception. They also don't have a lot of the very basics in place. And because they don't have those basics in place, especially in our ability to have not been able to account for our fragile ecologies. Today, hill stations are actually facing a lot more problem as the climates change, and there's a lot of vulnerability that we are seeing, both of landscapes, the hill mountain ecosystems, as well as the people who are inhabiting these places. So I would like my panelists to speak to the extrinsic pressures, but also intrinsic pressures that are very much uh, I don't know if we can call them pressures, but what I do know is that hill stations, like say the Shimla, which is the capital of the state of Himachal Pradesh, also needs, it's a necessity. Development is a necessity. It needs to host some of the larger infrastructure, especially in the social sector, because it services the entire hinterland, whether that is hospitals, whether it is universities, whether it is any other cultural spaces. So by virtue of being the capital, but also by virtue of being one of the most urbanized places, the capitals of the hill stations are under a lot of pressure, and a lot of it is necessity. So you need these necessarily, you need development necessarily, but you also need to think about how do you foreground the mountain ecosystem, ecologies of the mountain ecosystems, and how do you try to get a balance between uh, conservation and development. So with that short background, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite the panelists to speak to both these extrinsic and intrinsic pressures. I am going to, as I have already communicated, I am hoping that we will, each of the panelists, I will put forward in your basket 10 to maximum 11 minutes. My colleague here, Vanessa, will be doing the timekeeping, and she will also be flagging that 10-12 minutes as we move ahead. And then we will move on to try and string the conversations and see how we can create some sort of a comprehensive narrative around what each of you have said. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with Mr. Avay Shukla. Welcome, Mr. Shukla. And what I would like you to speak on is that could you give us your ideas about what is really happening in terms of the larger infrastructure that has got prioritized both historically and continues to get prioritized in the mountain systems, and what are the impacts of some of these larger infrastructure? Now, this could be related to hydropower, as in the state of Himachal Pradesh. It could be related to tourism. It could be related to large infrastructure projects like highways, like big roads. So that is also how we conceptualize development in a dominant way. So I would like you to speak a little bit to that idea. What I would request each of my panelists is to keep the conversation a little bit forward looking so that we are able to see how we can take this narrative a little bit ahead, to say that we don't just speak about the problems, but we also speak to the idea of how we resolve some of these issues. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Mr. Shukla, and look forward to listening to you.
Thank you, Anjali. So I have about 10 to 11 minutes to address the two subjects I wanted to address, which is one is hydel projects and the other is tourism related. Okay, I'll try and wrap it up in 11 minutes. You mentioned, Anjali, about striking a balance between conservation and development. My personal feeling in the context of Himachal is that the time for striking a balance is over. What we need to do now is redress the balance in favor of conservation. The balance has already been upset badly, as we are seeing every year now, and with the effects of climate change and extreme weather events, that is all the evidence we need to argue that what we need to do now is have a fresh look at all our core policies, whether it is hydel, whether it is construction, whether it is urbanization, or whether it is tourism. Now, coming to hydel, it is no coincidence that the maximum impact over the last 4 years, starting from 2022, Himachal has been facing massive floods every year during this April to August period. And we've lost more than 1,000 lives, including the current year. We have sustained damages, according to the government, of almost 13 to 14,000 crores. So this is enough ground to have a relook at what we are doing. And as I said, it's no coincidence that most of these damages have occurred in the river valleys where we have hydel projects. Now, to take an overview, Himachal has an identified hydel potential of 24,000 megawatts. 13,000 has already been tapped. We are already generating 13,000 megawatts. Roughly 4,500 to 5,000 megawatts are in the pipeline. That is, these projects have been sanctioned. They are under construction or planning or whatever. They are a fait accompli, which leaves another 4,000 megawatts yet to be explored. And the government is going hammer and tongs at exploiting this 4,000 megawatts also. Unfortunately and sadly, the low-hanging fruits have been plucked. The potential of 4,000 megawatts now lies in the more difficult areas of Upper Kinnaur, Pangi, and Lahaul Spiti. Now, these are ecologically and geologically the most fragile areas of the Himalayas within the state of Himachal Pradesh. The damage which will be inflicted on the environment in these areas, if we go ahead with trying to exploit this 4,000 megawatts remaining, is going to be tremendous. The people are protesting. In Lahaul Spiti, they're protesting. In Kinnaur, they are protesting. But the government, as usual, like most governments, and I'm not talking here only of the current government, I'm talking of all successive governments. There has been no change in perspective in respect of this. They're only looking at the money. So the time has come to have a relook at the hydel projects. We are all aware of, hydel projects have two stages. One is the construction phase, and the other is the operational. We're all aware of the adverse impacts on the environment during the construction phase. That is the deforestation, the muck dumping, the constricting of river flows, etc. But we now also need to look at the operational phase, which over the last few years has become evident is causing a lot of environmental damage along the riverfronts. You said to be forward-looking, so I'll give three examples or three suggestions of what needs to be done. Now we've seen Malana 1. I think this is the third year running that the dam has collapsed. If I'm not mistaken, this is either the second year running or the third year running that it has collapsed. Hundreds and thousands of crores are spent every year to repair it, and then it goes into operation again. What we need now, and it is absolutely imperative, is to have another look or study of the hydrology of our rivers. These dams and these projects have been planned on the basis of hydrological studies which are 20 to 30 years old. The discharge, what happens in the various seasons, the snow melt, the monsoon, etc., etc. Now, that is outdated. Climate change has made those hydrological studies absolutely out of date now. They are no longer relevant. The hydel projects are not prepared for the changes which are occurring both in precipitation. We call them cloudbursts. Cloudbursts have been happening for dozens of years. Why is it that today their impacts are so severe? It's partly because of climate change, because we have more extreme weather events. We have much more intense rainfall in a shorter period. Rains used to begin earlier in July. Now they start in April and May. Then the intensity is massive. So this snow melt is reducing. I'm sorry, snow melt is increasing. Now, the hydrological studies need to be revisited, and new SOPs need to be planned for our hydel projects. Whenever an accident happens, like in Malana, the stock response we get from the project proponents is that we are following the SOPs. Now, the SOPs which you will follow for Bhakra Dam or some dam in the plains is not the same SOP which is required in our mountain rivers and at heights of 3,000 to 4,000 meters. For example, water is inventory for the hydel projects. They hesitate or are reluctant to release water till the last possible moment from the dam. They will wait till the last moment before releasing the waters, and when they do release the discharge, open their sluice gates, it is precisely at the time when, in any case, maximum rainfall and precipitation is taking place. The rivers are already flooded during that period, and we see this every year in the Beas. Every year in the Beas, we see that water is released by the dams when the rivers are already overflowing due to the rains. Now, this adds to the problem which the people downstream face. This year, just a week or 10 days back, the Pong Dam decided to do desilting. In the middle of this rainfall, this intense rainfall period which we are having, they decided to do desilting upstream of the Pong Dam, the Largi Dam decided to release water because obviously their high water level or whatever had been reached. Now, can you imagine the impact of two dams releasing water at the same time? No wonder Pando is getting washed away on a regular basis every second year. And the effect of this stretches all the way down to Hamirpur, etc. So the SOPs have to be revised. The hydrological studies have to be revisited, and the new SOPs have to be devised in accordance with whatever data the new hydrological studies throw up. And there has to be better coordination between the various projects. At the moment, it appears there is absolutely no coordination or very little as to the management of the waters in their respective reservoirs or dams. Malana 2 releases water. Why isn't Malana 1 prepared for the release of water by Malana 2? Last year, the dam collapsed. This year, exactly the same thing happened. Now, this is not only a financial loss. It is a tremendous hardship which the people and the villages and the residents of the downstream areas have to face every single year. This has to change. I believe last year the state government had issued notices to 24 projects. What has happened to that? What came of those notices? Has any action been taken against these? So this is something which I feel our state government, our chief minister, has to take up at the highest level at the center, number one. Number two, put a complete stop to sanctioning or approving new hydel projects. The tipping point has been reached and it is no longer sustainable either financially or socially or environmentally. Now, that was for the hydel projects. Vanessa, how much time do I have left?
That's just 10 minutes now.
1 minute?
Yes, you
Two
have
more
1 minute
minutes.
left.
Maybe we can
Okay.
take. Maybe we can take two more minutes.
Right, sorry. So tourism. Now, tourism, the biggest problem, I could have said a lot, but I'll just mention this. The biggest problem we have today is that the numbers of tourists coming to Himachal, given our environmental status and infrastructure development, is unsustainable. 20 million tourists come to Himachal every year. That is almost 3 times the population of Himachal. We are not prepared for that. We cannot build the infrastructure for such numbers because of geological and other constraints. I was shocked to read some time back a statement by our chief minister that by 2030, Himachal proposes to attract 50 million tourists. This is unthinkable. It's absolutely, we can't manage 2 crore. So we have to reduce the number of tourists. The government has to find methods. There are physical measures like issuing passes, etc., which we did during the COVID time, which should be the last resort. Before that, we have to devise ways to ensure that the tourist numbers are controlled. Shimla cannot sustain 15,000 vehicles entering Shimla every day when we have a parking of only about 4,000 vehicles. Laul Spiti and the Atal Tunnel cannot sustain 20,000 vehicles crossing the Atal Tunnel every day. And the first thing to do is stop this 4-laning of highways. Not only are they environmentally destructive on a massive scale, as we are witnessing every year, including this year, all the major damages are along the 4-lane highways because of the excavation and the unscientific hill cutting. So stop the 4-lane highways so that you can control the number of vehicles, concentrate more on ropeways, and press the center for extending our existing British-era railway lines. Because if this kind of tourism continues, then God help us, nothing can save us because we just are not prepared, and creating the kind of infrastructure which is required to accommodate 5 crore tourists every year will be environmentally devastating. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shukla. That was quite interesting, even though your tourism was not so much so elaborate as hydropower, but we look forward to hearing more on it as we proceed.
Some type, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
some.
I will now ask Mr. Deepak Sanan to come in and give us a little bit of a perspective, because I know that you have been speaking about the, not just the tourism numbers that are increasing, but also the populations that are increasing in the city, in Himachal, especially in towns like Shimla, but also the overall state, and what are the implications of this increase in population, especially in terms of built as well as unbuilt landscapes.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan. Let me just say that it's not so much actually population increase that I think is a concern. I'll go to the point you made in your introductory remarks and your concept notes about haphazard placemaking.
So can you tilt the laptop a little bit so we can see you more? Yeah.
Is that better? Tikender?
That looks better.
Okay. So what I was saying is that this whole issue of what my concern is, what are we looking at going forward? Not so much about what immediately about saying, oh, we need to proscribe this, we need to ban this, or we need to do this or not to do this. It's more about what is likely to happen. What do trend lines tell us about what is likely to happen? And I take off from the point that, okay, so we have this issue of what you've called haphazard placemaking, that we've learned, we've gone into this very ad hoc, very what seems to be disastrous way of just building, constructing, both at the private level of buildings and at the public level of infrastructure. And is there a prospect that this is going to come to a halt by our saying so? I don't think so. I think if we simply say, oh, we need to just ban it, I don't think it's going to happen. What we have today, from a demography perspective, if we really look at it, actually a state like Himachal has reached the apogee. It's already at the peak. Our population as a state is likely to start declining next year. I'm sure the population, the new census will show that we've already crossed the tipping point. But more important is the fact that if we think that growth in economic terms will continue at the kind of pace which it has in the past, so in per capita terms, it would be significant as population starts slowing. In which case, prosperity as something which drives the current pattern of development is likely to continue. So even as demography may dictate seemingly a slowdown, on the other hand, prosperity and the growth is going to say, no, we've got to continue. The question then arises is, why in the face of obvious disasters, obvious great even private losses, not just public losses, which Mr. Shukla was talking about, huge losses due to calamities, why does this continue? Why does even the possibility of great loss not seem to inhibit the way we seem to be heading into more and more of the same? That, I think, is what really needs to concern us. And in my view, the reasons why we seem to not be making headway, the most important reason would be that currently, no one really actually takes anything seriously about, stop it. Nobody takes it seriously. 2 years ago, 2023, we had massive losses. Himachal had so much losses. There were videos everywhere of buildings just being washed away, watercourses in flood, dams bursting. What did we have? For 1 month, the government said, ban on construction in Shimla. It was lifted within a month. To me, that is a great pointer to the fact that if you want mass behavior change to occur, if you want entire communities, entire society to change its behavior and way it looks at it, it's not does not happen if I point fingers at the outside world. It is related to me as people of the state, that we have to start looking at. And how do I start looking at it? When the opinion makers, the leaders, the state, the government itself is some of the biggest defaulters on all the rules that it lays in place for people. It tells people, don't build X place. Don't build more than so many stories. And then it builds an 11-story high court. It builds an abattoir at a place which is right next to a watercourse and just gets completely swept away within a year of being built. Now, if you have this kind of thing occurring, that means what you really need is the role models have to change their behaviors first. The influence makers have to change their behavior. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know if it's easy to do this. But my point is, unless the state and its institutions and important people in the cities start really talking and start doing things which make a difference, the mass of society is not going to follow any new norms. The second point I wanted to make is, so what is this norms which we want to preach? Is it enough to just say, stop? I think we need to go beyond binaries. Binaries which say, this is prohibited, this is allowed. No, we need a more nuanced approach to say that the matrix is much more complex. It's not about if it's a slope of beyond 50 meters, 50% or 40% or 30%, normally there's a 30% slope. Beyond that, don't build. No, it's not about pure slope. It's also about underlying strata. It's slope, it's underlying strata. It's the kind of climate in a locality, what kind of rainfall actually occurs in that area, what kind of snowfall occurs, what kind of time periods it occurs in. We need to look at that. We need to look at water courses, distances, drainage systems. We need to make a matrix of all these various parameters and say, okay, what kind of structures can be allowed in different ratios, proportionate ratios of these parameters? Some of them will be zero, sure. In some conditions of slope, of underlying strata, of climate, of drainage lines, zero. But there will be variations in different locations. You could have temporary structures. You could put in tents or very temporary structures in some places. In some places, you could say, I'm allowing even multi-storied buildings because the underlying strata and everything else is fine for it and it can take it. So create a typology. One, create this typology for the state as a whole by discussions with all the experts, and then start saying that government and important projects which need clearance will undertake this analysis of these various matrix factors before they undertake any construction. Only then they will start construction, that based on this matrix, what is allowed in the specific place in which they want to do any activity. Once you have that, and once you start following such a norm, you will find that easily you are influencing mass behavior. People will also want to follow this. You can start saying, if you want a building plan approved, get an analysis done by experts on a matrix of the various factors, and then you will get approval accordingly. You start doing this, start popularizing it across rural and urban local bodies, you will start having a situation where your building activity will start following a certain mitigating phenomena of what really works and what is likely not to work. I mean, it seems so much, it seems, oh, how difficult is this going to be? Why not we just proscribe and ban and just go ahead? I think it's a bit of a, it's shouting at the moon. It's not going to work. Things will carry on the way we are unless we really say that we want to develop role models of good governance. We want to sit down and do the hard work of structuring matrices of what is allowed in a nuanced way rather than just binaries of yes and no. Binaries will not work. That's the first point I wanted to make. Second, do I have some time, Vanessa?
Vanessa, are you
Yes,
there?
you have 2 more minutes.
2 more minutes, yes.
2 more minutes. I'll just say that fortunately for us, hydro is not going to be an issue in Himachal insofar as new projects are concerned. Both the market, both policy and market have ensured that no new projects are likely to be built. It just isn't viable anymore. It just doesn't work for anyone to do work in hydro. And whatever the government will throw at it and say, I want to incentivize, I want to try and improve, overall the incentive structure is against it. And I don't think it's going to be a serious issue in coming years at all. Existing projects will continue to be an issue, continue to need regulation. Fine. New projects, I don't see it as an issue. On tourism, I would just say the incentive structure must begin at home. If tourists are coming, it is because we want them. As Mr. Shukla says, our chief minister says he wants 50 million tourists. All politicians are saying, we want more tourists. They fill our pockets. We want more to happen on these lines. We've got to think in terms of what do countries which want to limit this kind of thinking and growth, how do they look at carrying capacity? How do they seek to limit it? Is it by bans? Is it by proscribing? Very seldom. You've got to create incentive structures which do this. The incentive structures are not so much about permits. It's about taxation of people who gain from tourism. Especially at local body level, you need to start having more taxes at local body level to understand what tourist is impacting locally, and local bodies need to be empowered. It's a tall order, but we've got to start thinking of how to decentralize, how to start in a highly literate, educated state. How do we start thinking about more empowered, decentralized local bodies making decisions on what it wants to let in, what it wants to limit, what it wants to continue? I think we need to go that route. There are no easy answers. It's easiest to say ban and most difficult to actually go ahead with it. It's much more difficult to plan and structure for capacitating people, to make them empower people, to make them think on certain lines, much more difficult, but in the long run, much more likely to yield results. I'll end there just for the moment, and we can always go back to addressing sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. In the interest of time, I will just move on to my next panelist, Pratibha. Pratibha, for you, I will start where Mr. Sanan stopped, where I'm going to ask you to think a little bit inwards now. And, we know that there have been issues and in terms of, what the hill stations are going through, but what does it actually manifest in when we start, especially from the built fabric perspective, right? He spoke about tourism. He spoke about, the kind of development that we are having. So, in empowering local bodies. He spoke about, especially about what has to be allowed and not allowed. So if you could speak to a little bit more to that prospect, where we are saying that, in hill stations, we are seeing huge changes as far as the built fabric is concerned. What really is happening and how can we move forward from there?
Thank you so much, Anjali. As you said, that I'm going to take it forward from what our hill stations are witnessing. Unfortunately, we are talking at a time when, the hill states like Uttarakhand and Himachal are facing the brunt of climate change. As Mr. Shukla said, it's not that cloudbursts have not taken place in the past, but somewhere down the line, we have gone wrong in our development model. Hill stations like Shimla, Kulu Manali, Dharamsala, Dalhousie, Kasauli, all have turned into concrete jungles. And unfortunately, there is no stopping. Despite the horrifying images of 2023 monsoons, when buildings came down like a pack of cards and, massive deodar trees were uprooted, we see no difference. I mean, situation is no better than what it was then. And unfortunately now, the impact of climate change is very much visible in terms of erratic rains. There is no snow in December. We have snow in March. And, there is accelerated glacial melting resulting in flooding. So, there is talk of it, but it is not translating into action. When we talk of constructions, we have the town and country planning norms, but unfortunately, the monitoring and the regulation part is practically missing. Himachal, if you talk of, there are more than 30 to 40,000 unauthorized structures whose status still remains unauthorized. And the worst is that the government has brought in 8 retention policies to regularize and compound these unauthorized structures. Now, this only emboldens people to, undertake further construction. And if you look at Shimla or Kullu Manali, the manner in which every conceivable inch of land is being covered with multi-storied structure, it's scary to say the least. Shimla itself had been expanding on an interim development plan of 1979. It is just 2 years back that we got a development plan. So, I mean, that speaks of our, planning. And the worrisome part is that the rural areas where, corridor development is taking place along the national highways and 4 lanes, they are practically out of the ambit of planning area. So it is literally creating a chaos. So we need to have better monitoring and implementation. And as Mr. Sanan said that, governments cannot enforce rules on others when the government itself is the biggest violator. We see government constructions being raised on nalas, waterways, and when you stop the water channel, the building is bound to collapse. There is subsidence, there are landslides. So even though we have the landslide zoning and everything has been done, but nobody is bothered to even enforce it, that, whether the landslide prone area should be declared no construction zones. So the situation almost remains the same. And now our chief minister and the state government is talking of vertical construction. Considering paucity of space in the hills, they are talking of vertical construction with, constructions up to 13 to 20 stories being allowed in a place like Simla. I mean, of course, one would say that, all other countries are doing it. Singapore is doing it, other places. But we can't overlook the fact that most parts of Himachal fall in zone 4 and 5 seismic zone. So, unless until the structural stability aspect is taken care of, we are waiting for disaster to happen. So we have to be very, very particular. And as we said, we have to have a sustainable model for development, especially when it comes to tourism. So the problem is not just limited to, residential constructions. It is commercial, residential. Tourism is one major revenue generating area for Himachal. And but what we are doing is we have humongous concrete structures which are more of an eyesore than something which is in sync with the local architecture. So if you go into remote areas of Kullu, Manali, you will see massive structures coming up and trees being felled for all this. So it is quite a scary situation. And as far as tourism is concerned, we have no carrying capacity. Most of our towns, hill towns, are saturated. So we need to develop new tourism destinations. And as Mr. Sanan said, that we need to undertake carrying capacity of our towns and accordingly allow, visitors to come. And capping the number of tourists is something which Himachal will have to look. Otherwise, the situation is going to be alarming. And we have spoken of, constructions. We talk of green areas, we talk of core areas. And there has been an example in Himachal where in December 2000, 17 green belts were created. And these were meant to be no construction zones. And the results after 20 years did show that, the results were very encouraging. The green area and these practically emerged as lungs of the town. Now the government has given relaxation and allow here also. These green areas, be it Manali, be it Shimla, these are the areas which are the most congested. They are taking maximum burden. So So we need to, limit the number of people coming here, and we need to decongest our towns. We've just heard the terminology we've heard of in papers. Himachal is still struggling to create a satellite township on the outskirts of Shimla to decongest the state capital. Built by, the British for a few thousand. Today, the population of Shimla and suburbs is crossing 3 lakh. And our civic amenities, be it water, electricity, the roads, the parking, everything has, it's bursting at the seams. And it's become like, a nightmare for the locals. The summer months are a nightmare where, we wait when it will get over. So we need to look at issues like decongesting our towns, undertaking carrying capacity, studies. And unfortunately, the way forward, as we are saying, is we need to look for solutions. Himachal, despite several, dressing down from the Supreme Court, the National Green Tribunal, the State High Court, they've come down very heavily on the Town and Country Planning Department and our urban local bodies for failing to regulate the norms. We do have norms in place for everything, but unfortunately, in the government structure, the Town and Country Planning Department and Urban Development Department remain low on priority, and they are the most ignored departments. They are badly falling short on technical staff. So who will go out and implement and enforce the norms? So you have everything is there on paper, but the implementation and monitoring part is practically missing. And we have seen that in the recent past, Kullu Manali has been the most vulnerable, and Kullu Manali remains one of the most popular tourist destination of Himachal. But the pictures that we are emerging every single day, our infrastructure, we've had a loss of more than 2,000 crore. This summer only, after June 20th till today, the losses have mounted to 2,000 crores. So somewhere down the line, we need to think that, where did we go wrong and what needs to be rectified? So the mitigation plan, Himachal claims that, it is the first state in the country to link climate change impact to its development policies. But very little can be seen on the ground. Even now, the constructions are carrying on in the manner in which they were carrying on. Government has been barred by the courts to bring about another retention policy, which only emboldens the violators, and it is very demoralizing and demotivating for the law-abiding citizens when such retention policies with an eye on the vote bank are floated each time by successive governments, be it any party. Successive governments have just indulged in retention policies. So it is high time that we look at enforcing the norms very, very strictly, and irrespective of who it is, the norms must be enforced. Even now, violations happen, in the heart of the town, and we are not taking note of that. And another very alarming area is the manner in which tourism projects are being allowed to come up very close to the rivers. Whether it is Beas, whether it is Satluj, the norms say that 100 meters from the riverside, no construction should be allowed to come. But we've all been witness, and public memory is very short-lived. People are constructing hotels right along the riversides, and they are the ones, who are swept away each monsoon. And the river courses are changing, their course. So government will have to very strictly enforce and enhance the distance at which structures should be allowed to come up. The central government has, fortunately for Himachal, the central government has created an intersectoral team, which has experts from, all IITs and, SPA and other experts are there. They visited Himachal earlier this month, and they would be preparing a, blueprint of, how to go about. But eventually, it is we who are living here who need to, take the situation in your hand and take corrective measures and mitigation measures. There is more talk and less action. As we have seen, 2023 was one of the worst monsoon where, our roads and bridges and houses were washed away. Last year was same. Rampur area of Simla witnessed cloudbursts and flash floods. And now this time it is Siraj in Mandi. So, our hill stations are like a ticking bomb. God forbid for a earthquake. As I said, most of Himachal is in seismic zone 4 and 5. So we have to take that into account, because with climate change and global warming, the manifestation is very, very visible now in all respects. So from the construction and tourism point of view, it has to be sustainable development, where the government and the law enforcing agencies will have to be extremely strict, and they will have to come down very heavily to ensure that a Joshimat or what we are seeing in Uttarakhand does not happen here. So those are my views on how we are going wrong with our development model, because banning is not the solution. It is regulation and monitoring, that the laws are strictly adhered to. So those are my views. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pratibha, for bringing in that perspective. I now move on to Mr. Nandu Negi. And Mr. Negi, you are an architect, so I think a lot, and you did mention that you would like to speak a little bit in terms of how does the architecture and the planning kind of contribute or not to the way we are taking this forward. So over to you. I would like you to take 10 to 11 minutes and give us a perspective on specifically on neighborhood planning and improvement thereon.
Thank you, Dr. Mohan, to allow me to be a part of the webinar today, and to be speaking on something that is related more to more in practical terms of a neighborhood, because collectively, whatever is the image in terms of climate change, what has happened is that we are trying to control the water and the effects of that to the greening and to the human lives. So I thought that the best way out is to look at how we look at neighborhoods and water systems in the neighborhood, and how they are being channelized and how they are being taken care in the present day context. So having been brought up in Shimla and in the area that I live in, I thought to look at the water systems within the neighborhood would be the best way to bring in a practical sort of way to look into how it's being affected, since they are not being channelized and not being taken care of. I'd like to put in my presentation. There are a few slides that I would like to put in, wherein we can see how it's affected. I would request Chandrani to please.
Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Visible. It's visible. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to.
Go ahead, Mr. Negi.
I just like to bring it into. I want to make it full screen, so I'm just trying to see it in my screen. It shows. Yeah, 1 minute. Yes. So what I have done is I'm trying to say that planning and development at the neighborhood level is, I'm trying to see it in collectively. If you look at how the water systems have been in the neighborhood, collectively a neighborhood a system of working of the water system shows the images of what it will be collectively for the town as a whole. So basically what is there is, it's in terms of its topographical and geographical conditions, where where in the screen I'm showing that there are those arrows that I'm showing, and the circle part is the area where actually I'm living in, is the Kilini area. And the arrows that I'm showing, these arrows, blue arrows, are the ones which are the valleys, which are the prominent valleys where through the water channels and the water systems work, the water drainage system of the area. And next slide, please. Planning and technical considerations to what I had shown in my previous slide is, over the decades, the drainage channels have been existing based on the topographical setting and designed for its water carrying capacities. Vertical and horizontal services were designed to breathe with nature, allowing 70% of the water to percolate within the ground system, while the remaining 30% would flow into the drains and the natural gorges and nalas. Dry stone masonry walls making vertical surfaces and stone on edge drain channels to allow the water to percolate and recharge the underground systems. Presently, the overdeveloped all these areas. I want to the previous slide, please. I want to read. Yeah, these images that you're seeing is actually presently with the overdevelopment of all these development techniques, threats with vertical and horizontal surfaces, which look more industrial, not allowing surfaces to breathe. What is happening is that all the vertical surfaces are now being built with cement concrete walls, and horizontal surfaces treated with interlocking precast tiles. These techniques have been reversed the percentage of water flow and absorption of the water to 70 to 30, which means that whatever the present system is allowing the water to flow at 70% and only observe 30% of it. The next slide that I am showing is that it is to show that how. Next slide. Yes. In this slide, if you see what originally has been there in Shimla is that the walls were constructed which were allowing the mountains to breathe actually. The dry stone masonries were allowing the percolation of water and not putting the load onto the main soil strata. So it allowed the water systems to flow into the drains, and the drains were also having stone on edges, which allowed the water.
Mr. Shukla, are you there?
Yes.
Nanduji, I think we are losing Nanduji.
Nanduji seems to have got lost.
Yeah, I think he has. We've lost him, I think. Sorry.
Nandu Saab, are you there? No.
Let me give him a call. Yes, wait for a second.
You might lose me too very soon.
I did not see you on the.
Power has gone. We just lost
Yeah.
power over here.
I saw that you were. Okay. Mr. Nandu, maybe he's also going through something similar.
Anjali, what I suggest is this, that it looks stuck. If you could move on to Tikender.
Okay, let's do that.
Give me a second. Give me a second. I'm calling you. Sir.
No, we always can come back to him. There's not an issue. When the power gets resumed, we'll go back to him.
Dr. Anjali, wait for half a minute because he's rejoining. The power, your power is gone, but he has some backup system. He's coming back.
Sure, no problem. No issues.
He's coming back.
Okay. No problems.
because he is in a flow. No, it's better that he just finishes up.
Correct.
He is making a very pertinent, valid point from the mountain
Sure,
perspective.
sure. We will just wait for him to come back. So what I will do is, just to keep the time for all of us, is that Tikender, what I would like you to do as soon as Mr. Nandu finishes his talk, it would be really good to hear from you. Are you able to hear me? Okay, it would be really good to hear from you that, we have already spoken, and Mr. Sanan also brought out the whole idea of placemaking, which is what I was trying to invoke, that we're making places in
Nanduji
as
is
a
there. Yeah, but I'm listening. I think. I
yeah,
think you can
so
finish
very
and then
quickly, I'll just wind this up. In relation to, what the demands are from the hill stations, both from the tourism perspective, but also internally from the growth and development perspective. So, for example, how do we move the idea from place making to place keeping? And Mr. Nandu is speaking about some of those things. What was there and how do we hope to retain that? So I will just like you to speak on that. And over to you, Mr. Nandu.
Nandu Sahab, you can start, please.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put it into my view system. It is.
But can you see the screen there? I mean, the screen is already there.
We have,
Yeah, actually,
yeah.
I can see the screen. What is happening is that it's not showing my full screen on the thing. That's what the problem is. 1 minute, I'll just get one.
Nandu, you wanted to contrast this image which you are seeing of the old dry masonry with new constructions, right? So, because we can see this entirely. So, do you want to switch to the next slide?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Yeah,
you.
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
I'm sorry, I think probably there was an electricity issue. So it's.
We can hear you, and the screen is showing,
These are some of the images of the old stone retaining walls on the Cart Road and the US Club area. So basically, you can have an idea of how originally old Shimla was and how the construction system at that point of time allowed these walls to breathe. When I say vertical and horizontal breathing, I'm trying to say that the vertical surfaces and the horizontal surfaces had porous systems. And during the rain, 70% of the water got absorbed and 30% of water used to come down to the drains. Unfortunately, the present system that is there, which probably in the next slide I'll show you, is that these retaining walls have now been in the smart city project along the main Cart Road areas. These stone walls, which were allowed to breathe earlier, have now been made with CC, which totally close the vertical walls as well as the drains, which means that it has reversed the system of making 70% of the water to flow and only 30% to get absorbed. When this 70% of the water is in the drains, it ultimately goes and affects the water channels, which are the main carriage lines of the drainage system, which destroys the water channels as well as take away the greens along with it, which are actually the breathing lungs of Shimla. So basically, that is what I want to show. The next slides, we will show that. I would like to show, yes, these are some of the areas. I'm sure most of the panelists are from Shimla. So these are some of the nostalgic, images of what old Shimla has been. I'm sure the next slide also will show that. Next slide, please. Yes, these are some of the slides which you see, which are the smart city slides, where you see these are the CC walls, which mar the total landscape, and they are so jarring. And this is what is in the name of development. This is what is happening, where you see 70% of the water is actually flowing into the drains and 30% is getting absorbed, which is making the underground water systems. There is no recharging, and we are having the drying up of some of the local water outlets which were there originally there in Shimla in many of the areas. Yeah, next slide, please. Now, these are some of the issues that I have. My concerns are for the green cover. One of the major concerns about the environmental protection is the depletion of the trees, where the setbacks of 2 meters in the bylaws from the existing tree and 5 meters from the forest still continues to be overlooked by developers, even though they exist in the development plan. We all know that, to the best of our knowledge, that trees reaching a height of about 15 meters cannot possibly have such a shallow roots. Therefore, permitting plans to proceed in a manner is effectively strangulating the very existence of these trees, only to later declare them unsafe for the survival of the buildings. What I'm trying to say here is that earlier, when the plans are to be sanctioned, you allow for a 2-meter setback around the tree and allow the building to happen. And 10 years down, when the building is up, the tree is a threat to the building and the applications are moved. I'm sure Mr. Tikender Panwar will know, because as a deputy mayor, he has been heading some of the tree committees in which, in 10 years down, the owner would come and say that the tree is a threat to the building. So that is how the system is, and that's how we are going. And believe every year we have almost about 1,000 of trees which are allowed to be cut from the tree committee. And no system is in place where you say that if you cut a tree, how many trees you plant, where, how, and how they are maintained. I don't think so there are any such kind of systems in place. So, I mean, a mechanism must be suggested for granting building permissions, while also mandating the cultivation of certain number of trees in dedicated locations, ensuring their growth until maturity. Alternatively, an appropriate amount of remuneration could be determined and deposited in advance for these trees allowed to be removed, and some sort of system to be put in place for the forest department to ensure that this happens. Next slide, please. Now, this is what has happened with the interim development plan, that we allowed Shimla to be the way it is today. And we see the entire concrete jungle, and that's their worry. To the green cover, which I show in the next slide, is where is the worry, what happens to the green cover which is existing, which probably may see the same fate, like the way I'm saying that today they are assets, tomorrow they might be a threat to the urbanization, and they might say that they need to be cut. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is some of the green areas that you see within that precinct and the area that in neighborhood where I live, and which I'm enjoying at the present moment, and I'm trying to preserve them as memories. I don't know for how long we'll be able to see them, but yes, certainly they are there today. So we are lucky, and we see some of the areas adjoining within this forest area where the system of water carriageways have not been properly planned, and which needs to be seen and to be dealt with sensitively, so that in future we are able to at least have them the way they are. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is one of the areas between Tarland and Kilini, which 6 months back was tarred the way you are seeing in the previous image, and this is what it exists, the way it exists today. Because of the drainage system not being maintained, the water is on the roads, and that is what it is, how it is today. You see the water is flowing on the road, and the entire metal portion has been uprooted. So I don't know how well utilized these funds, public funds, are, and who's accountable for all that, and when the channelization of water will happen. Next slide, please. Now, this is a development which has started happening in this catchment line, where you see a structure being made right on the Nala, where I believe a community center is coming up, and there's also a water storage tank which has come up in this area, and a tree has already been slain. You can see the tree in the long distance. So this is what is happening in the name of development, that the trees will go in due course of time. Probably some of these trees which you see behind in a couple of years may not be there. And I'll be the witness to show you these images then when it is not there. I don't want that to happen, but probably things might change in coming times. Next slide, please. Now, these are some of the images where you see the tree is already been uprooted in the name of development. And we all will say that this is more important than the trees. And that's how it is. In the images, you will also see the latest way of how smart city main drain channels are being made in concrete, where you see the volume of the water which you are seeing in the drain cannot be adjusted. Even previously, the size of this drain has been so wide, and the kind of drainage channel which has been made will not take care of the amount of water, that volume of water that will come into it. So basically there is planning fault and nobody is accountable for that. So that is also one area which we think that we need to look into. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, this is a classic example between Himland Hotel and Tarland, where actually the chief conservator's forest residence is right above there, and there had been a drainage which probably, I think, during the rains too much of water came into that. There was an existing drain over here which was made of stone that could not take that capacity of urban development that happened around this area, and that is where you see that the new channel has been created and slain Deodar tree you see in the image. This is what is happening. I'm just showing you an image in a neighborhood. You imagine this collectively in a whole town scenario, what it will be, and in coming times, if these water channels are not taken care, and if water is not channelized and designed properly with proper techniques and proper specifications, we may have these issues at a much larger scale. Next slide, please.
Mr. Nandu, unfortunately, we'll have to stop at this point in time, and
Okay.
maybe we will come back, given
That's fine.
in the
That's
interest
fine.
of time. I would like to invite Mr. Panwar
Yes.
now to
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
speak to us.
I'm so sorry it just happened in between that we electricity went up and it was.
No worries, no worries. It was quite interesting to get your perspectives on this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Tikender, I hand over to you, and also once again, starting from where Mr. Negi stopped. Development having gone wrong, development that worked once upon a time but then went wrong, and now how do we move on? So a little bit on that, and over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali. And Vanessa, please remind me when it's 6 minutes. And don't send a message, just say it's 6 minutes left, because once I'm in a flow, maybe it will be difficult for me to, control, or maybe. So I want to finish off in the given stipulated time. And please pardon me and permit me, Dr. Anjali, for, I'll come to your, the point that you've raised. But let me just build a larger picture of our ecosystem, the socio-political and economic, ecosystem in which the Himalayas we are passing through. And having said that, I mean, just to trigger from what you said, when was development right, or when was development okay? I would say it was never okay. Even the Britishers, when they came, so it's this extractive politics and extractive economics which drew the Britishers to Simla town. If you see my two major principalities of Simla, Koti and Chunga, they never lived on the ridges. They lived on, somewhere close to the rivers. Nandu Negi knows better than me. So it's through the British great engineering feat that they could construct a viceregal lodge where we had wild boar, and it's recorded where we had, huge amount of biodiversity, animal life, and of course, very extractive, what Ramchandra Guha has pointed out, how the best, finest oaks of Jogendanagar were taken to England to, have one of the finest furnitures and the logs for carrying on the railways. To say that, but despite that, I think we owe a great to the British legacy of how the construction has to happen. And there's a British manual lying in the Shimla Municipal Corporation of Civil Engineering, telling us how to construct on the mountains. For heaven's sake, if you construct a drain, so there is a way how that drain has to be constructed. Why I brought this point? Because I wrote some time back that the Norwegian parliament actually apologized from the Sami people for assimilating them into their national discourse. And I said, when would Kirti Bhai, people like you, the main discourse of apologize to us, the Himalayan people, for assimilating us for your greater goals of providing electricity to the entire country, bringing in all your hydropower projects here. It's not, Kirti Bhai, that we didn't know how to generate electricity. Mind you, I mean, we were in 1980s, we were 100% electrified. But this whole departure that takes place, and that's the point that I want to make. I don't want to go into much of history right now. But this departure that takes place from the 90s, what I call the new financial architecture, what we call the neoliberal capitalism that was swaying all across the world. That's the first thing. And it's not, and also to remind you, then when we were 100% electrified, we were providing basic health facilities, schools, creating middle class. Deepak Sananji is here. Deepak Sananji and Professor Chetan Singh, when we were traveling back from Kinnaur, in one of the literature festivals, Professor Chetan Singh told us a very funny anecdote. And that anecdote is that when he was traveling with his father, who was a DGP in Sundarnagar, just to tell you where we were, abysmally backward state, traveling from Sundarnagar to Mandi, that was Suket, it's the state times he was talking about, that the smell of the people, the stench of the people still haunts him. It is that kind of, and people from Sirmaur, Kinnaur, it's that kind of state that we build, and now we are next to Kerala in our human development indices. Park it till 1990s. So not that we didn't know how to generate electricity. But our post 1990s, we were not producing electricity for ourselves. We were producing electricity for the country. Nothing wrong with it. But how do we do that? That's the first thing. The second thing is all the support was coming from, you go ahead, you're a border state. We will provide you with a fiscal stimulus. You have your fiscal deficit. We'll help you in that fiscal deficit. Post 90s, here come this departure, and they say, look, boss, you have to manage your resources. And to manage your resources, you have to generate your resources. Now, how do the Himalayan states generate their resources? And it's Kirti Bhai not here. We're running a consortium of Himalayan towns. I can tell you all across the Himalayas, 13 states, and the 2 partial states that I'm talking about. All across the Himalayas, the story and the saga is the same. And that is that you are pushed by the center, by this new financial architecture, to start generating profit from your resources. We have Avay Shukla ji here, and that's what, there's another funny thing that I must share here. Avay Shukla ji report, please correct me, Shukla sahab, if I'm wrong. I think your report said no hydropower beyond 7,000 feet, isn't it, sir?
Yeah.
And then Deepak Sanan ji in the government said, he had to counter that report, and that came up in the literature festival. And he said he had to bring in a counter scientific, argument that no, we can have hydropower projects. So the compulsion came from somewhere else. Please, let's not miss that point. That is one of the important elements that I thought I would. And that's where I told Deepak Sanan, I said, Deepak Sananji, your heart is on the left. I mean, of course, because that's how it is. But while in service, you were doing something for the right. And because that's how we know how the hydropower, of course, Deepak Sananji was the power secretary. I mean, because he's my guru in many senses, I can make that comment in front of Deepak Sananji and both Avay Shukla. So the point is, how do we generate our resources? Hydropower? How do we generate? And as Shukla ji said, Himalayas came to be known through their hydropower potential. Go to Meghalaya, go to Arunachal Pradesh. That is how we are describing the Himalayas. Then the tourism potential. Our chief minister claims 5 crore. That's because we think that is where the resources are going to come. Already we are in a debt of 1 lakh crore rupees. So it's a vicious circle. We're not going to get out of it. That's the first thing I want to park. There are many other things, but because of time constraint, Dr. Anjali, please allow me. The second point is, when we were in 60s, 70s, not that the climate change was not was not there, but the stark difference that started happening post 1996, and that's the IPCC report, of course, the 6 that's explaining any child born after 1996 has not seen a single normal month, and any child born after 1996 has seen disaster once in 2 months. So it's a disaster oriented or a disaster led generation that we are talking about. It was not like that. So what does it mean? It means that extreme weather events. Why? Because if global, I was there in Paris climate talks, when we were in Paris in COP, when 1.5 degrees came as the mark. Kirti Bhai, Himalayas has already crossed 1.8, and what does it mean? 1.8 means that there will be a variation of more than 20%. Extreme weather events, maybe more than 25%. And so what Deepak Sanan was saying that, nothing is going to happen. Sir, the disasters are not going to let us forget, because they're going to come every day, every year. And as I said, this generation has not, they cannot lose sight. So we have to live with the disasters. The third point that I want to speak about is that even if I bring down all the buildings now, even if we say we plant 100% trees, what Shukla was saying, we have crossed the tipping point. And there's a Thompson report in 70s on the Himalayas. One should go through that. Nanduji knows about the Thompson report. And it says, once the Himalayas reach a sequestration level, you are gone. So we are already in that stage. So in this situation, what do? Do we just keep quiet, or we just say, okay, this is a global feature? I mean, since the disaster is going to happen, the fiscal architecture is not going to be changed in another 20 years, as I see, to be very honest, maybe 25 years. We also know how the global financial architecture functions. I think there I want to bring this experience of Kerala Urban Commission. I mean, I was part of the Kerala Urban Commission for 2 years. And there, Shukla Sahab, we've done this work for laying that urban policy for 25 years, how Kerala would advance. We have given them a demographic pattern for 100 years. They asked for 25 years because thanks to Professor James, who was kicked out from the IIPA, now he's in US, we brought him there. So we do not know how our urban patterns are emerging. So therefore, what we also need, Kirti Bhai, here is, you're the sole surviving member of the National Urban Commission. I'm your continuation in the Kerala Urban Commission. So we do not know. If we do not know how our urban patterns are emerging, what are we planning at? That's the first thing. The second point is, we need a different urban definition for the Himalayas, completely different definition. That's what we are doing in Wayanad. That's what we've suggested. You cannot go either with the statutory definition of the government, or you cannot go with the definition of the census, that 500, 70% male population, etc., etc. The moment you have road, what Pratibha Chauhan was describing, the moment you have national highways, there's an urban consciousness coming up. There's a house coming up. So the entire state and the entire Himalayas have to come in the planning ambit. That's the first thing. The second part, Kirti Bhai, Vanessa, let me know when the time is there. The second part is, and I take it from Avay Shukla ji. Avay Shukla ji was saying SOPs for hydropower. I would say SOPs for the entire planning process, because our planning process is faulty. It's not what Pratibha ma'am was saying, that, buildings are authorized or unauthorized. Ma'am, we did the HVRA for Shimla. Now, let me give you a very startling figure. I've never discussed this in the past. I'm telling it here in front of all of you. I was reading, it's called the Hazard Vulnerability Risk Assessment. And we did it for the entire Simla town. Kirti Bhai, if an earthquake strikes during day, we have an estimate that we'll lose some 16,000 people in Shimla. But if it strikes during the night, we'll lose somewhere around 24,000. And we did this rapid survey of our buildings. So the medical colleges where the people are supposed to be rushed, IGMC is one of the most vulnerable hotspots. It's going to collapse. The High Court never allowed my team to enter. And as Deepak Sanan was pointing out, 11 stories, or Shukla Sahab, this is definitely going to collapse. We know on the fragile ecologic environment. So it's not that we do not know. So, and all these are planned stuff. It's not that they violated norms, you know. So the planning buildings are also going to collapse. It's not that only the unauthorized buildings are going to collapse. So there in Kerala, what we've done is we've mapped every inch of land, what Sanansa was pointing out, every inch of land. Kirti bhai, there are 13 layers of data. You ask me right now, and I can tell you which part of Kottayam, which part of Kollam. This is what we did through our, the 2 years exercise. And these are the recommendations we've given to the government, that map every inch of land. Don't go by the simple FSI formula. That's gone. Gone is the era. So what you require is now a completely new SOP for the urban in Himachal Pradesh. If it's a vulnerable zone, if it's a landslide zone, we know, and if we have mapped it, so what to build, when to build. Okay, somebody said I have to leave. Vanessa, how much time do I have?
Just 1 more minute.
Oh, I asked you, please tell me when it's 6 minutes.
Oh,
So what to build, when to build, how to build, where to build. That should be, Dr. Anjali, the driving force for the Himalayas. What to build, when to build, how to build, where to build. And there comes the building typologies. We know the building typologies, Pratibha was saying about, about our conventional, whether the conventional architecture is enough, I do not know about that. And this, why again bring 90s? Because come 90s, and you thought we'll park our trees, we have a complete moratorium on tree felling, and we will bring in steel from Bokaro, imagining that Bokaro steel will protect us, in the Himalayas. And we've dumped millions and millions of tons of steel on our towns. So I think it is in this framework that we have to see. We have to come out of the extractive language, vocabulary of the Himalayas. We have to treat them a little different. And at the same time, we also need to have a pattern of demographies. And that is not so easy. I mean, we require some time to do that. Which way are our population? Like Sanan Sab said, our fertility rate has already gone low. We are already a declining population. So once we are a declining population, where are we going to advance? Finally, coming to the whole question of tourism. 2 days after, we'll be going to Nilgiris. And so through the Madras High Court, sir, we'll be defining the carrying capacity of Nilgiris. It's not difficult. It's a very scientific way in which we can build that. But the point is where the call has to be taken. The superintendent of police of Shimla was telling me, sir, you were saying 15,000. It was 15,000. 70,000 vehicles entered Shimla in a span of 2 days. Can you imagine? I mean, this is the number of cars entering the Himalayas, and for whom are we widening the roads? So I think it is in this framework we have to look at the economic framework. We ought to look at the whole question of the planning framework. And lastly, please give me 1 more minute, Dr. Anjali, is about the local self-government. How do we empower them? Now, in Kerala, what we have recommended is right from your blockchains, anything that is happening on data, anything that is happening, all these layers of data that I'm talking about, the patch of land, the repository of this data doesn't lie with the Kerala state government. Okay, where one department doesn't talk to the another department. All this, the recommendation is that there has to be a digital town hall. A repository has to be local self-governments. After all, that is how we envision our future to be henceforth 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years down the line. It cannot be governed from Simla or cannot be governed from Delhi. But silver lining is, for heaven's sake, stop treating as extractive, profiteering spaces for the larger national good, and then claiming it's a border state. In the larger interest of our borders, we'll be taking our railways, we'll be taking our highways. That's not going to succeed. We are the hotspots of climate vulnerability. We are the youngest range. We are absolutely fragile, and this is not going to sustain for long. That's all, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. That was really a very, very rich conversation. And in the interest of time, I don't have much time, but what I'm going to do is as follows. I'm going to just quickly reiterate some of the major points that came out of the panel, and then probably open up for question and answers. I do see that there are already some that have been put in. Very quickly, thank you, Mr. Shukla, for, actually across the panel, everybody's saying that we have reached the tipping point or we are beyond the tipping point, and what we need is a redressal system that needs to be put in place, and whether that's for hydrological projects, whether that for hydropower, or whether that is for tourism and large infrastructure on tourism, or it is for mostly for urban planning and urbanization processes. We need to rethink all of these and rethink these in context of changing climates. So that is something that came across almost through everyone, through most of the conversations. Placemaking, definitely the way it has been pursued in the hill stations is definitely not the right way to go about it. But then if we were to actually correct it, one way to do it is to have the government take the lead, to say that if these are the people of influence or people who are leading, then they cannot afford to be the violators, and therefore the role models need to actually start to change the things. Also, what I heard across most of the panelists was that to be able to, kind of say, determine development in a centralized manner, no, it will probably not work. The hill stations and every part within the hill state has a contextuality which requires a very nuanced understanding. We need to move to a decentralized system where urban local bodies and rural local bodies, and not just the urban, there's a lot of development, corridor development that's happening outside the urban peripheries, and that needs to be controlled. You need to empower your local governments to say that how do we actually start to own this system and how do we actually start to govern the place. Incentives was something that came out very strongly. Just saying a binary of doing it or not doing it is not going to do, but how do you, then bring in incentives to actually conceive and then implement development, which really works well both for the landscape and the people. There was also very repeated mention of the organizational and institutional frameworks that we need. We cannot have retention policies. We have the courts breathing down, but despite that, things have not changed. How do we actually start to, in a very both policy and plan, inform it scientifically, and then ensure that our organizations and our institutions who are leading or supposed to spearhead this development, they need to be very much aware of what is really happening. Development, yes, of course, the British Raj has always been extractive, but as you rightly said, there was there were some ifs and buts around the whole thing, and therefore it's very critical that we learn from, say, just a construction manual that has been put in. Nandu Negi ji just showed some really wonderful examples of what is really going wrong, where development went wrong. And despite all the pressures, if we manage to stick to some of the basics, maybe there will be some sort of a redressal that will happen. Thank you, Tikender ji, for actually bringing in the whole the new financial architecture and what it is really doing to the hill states, where there are these compulsive claims that are coming from elsewhere, and how do we actually break this vicious circle, connecting it to climate change and actually putting that out there that we are at 1.8 degrees centigrade, and we are actually what we are giving the next generation is just a whole lot of disasters, the frequency of which is going to constantly increase. Therefore, the need to be proactive rather than to move from reaction, and also from responsive to be proactive as far as our hill stations are concerned, and how do we bring in those changes. So with that, I will kind of these were some of the very excellent points that came out through the different panelists. And what I would really like you to now do is, I don't know, how do we go about this system of answering the questions? Maybe Chitrakshi will lead us on that. So I do see that there are a couple of questions. Okay, let me just take this forward. There is this question about community-based monitoring bodies, perhaps also moving towards a decentralized system, which really speaks to the regulatory mechanisms that climate change was bringing in. And I'll take two questions together. What the next question is how about forming community-based monitoring bodies and empowering local people to actually start dictating development. Then the next question is, what steps can the people, citizens, collective action be, and how can we make government, how can we hold the government more accountable for the development that we are seeing? And how do we make, a third question is, how do we inspire politicians to rethink and also redesign SOPs of hydropower projects on updates of the hydropower projects, as well as tourism infrastructure, as well as, say, urbanization and planning, as Tikender brought in. So let me just start with these three questions first, and then move on to a couple more that have come up. Over to you, I would say, Mr. Shukla, if you could also respond to some of these, and Tikender and Pratibha. I think these questions are more directed towards the three of you.
Sir, you have to unmute yourself, sir. Shukla sir.
On the question of empowering local communities, that's a very important point. But ever since the Panchayati Raj Act came in 1985, this has been consistently resisted by state governments and the central government, the finance ministry, the planning commission. I don't see it happening, frankly. I'm being brutally honest. I don't see it happening. Perhaps we should take small steps rather than go all out in empowering local communities. Right now, the panchayats, the pradhans are just a vestigious appendage utilized for issuing a few certificates, etc. They need to be involved in the planning process as well as in the monitoring of the planning or the policies of the government. One place to start with in Himachal, which I feel very strongly about, which I was discussing with the Rural Development Secretary just day before yesterday, is hand over the homestay scheme to the panchayats. This has been a very good, I must say, it has been a very good innovative policy of the state government in the I think it was in 2004 or 5 that the homestay policy was introduced. And we were the first state in the country to have a homestay policy. Today, there are more than 4,500 homestays registered with the tourism department. Probably twice that number are functioning without registering themselves. So we're looking at about 12 to 13,000 homestays. And why I say this is a very good policy is because it has dispersed tourism from the urban areas, which cannot sustain any more numbers of tourists or vehicles. So A, it has dispersed tourism to the rural areas. B, it has created livelihood opportunities for people in the rural areas and a dignified livelihood opportunity. They are no longer working just as waiters and cooks in hotels run by national chains. They are owners of their own units. So, a lot of importance has to be attached to this particular social aspect also. They're no longer employees. They are entrepreneurs in their own right. So my point is, hand it over to the panchayats. Share your revenues with them. Another good decision the government has taken this year is to impose a category-wise level of registration charges. I think it's 6,000 in the rural areas, going up to 12,000 per annum in the urban areas. Share that revenue with the panchayats. Give them the power to monitor the functioning of these homestays, because one district tourism officer sitting in the state capital has neither the time nor the resources to do it himself. This could be a starting point, I feel, for empowering panchayats in Himachal and giving them a stake in this particular policy, and then make them responsible for things like garbage collection, etc. in the rural area, which is another very major issue which is cropping up. The forests. I live in a village, as does Deepak, and the forests are full of plastic and beer bottles. And it's nobody's responsibility to clear it up. And it's a major irritant for the residents, for the permanent residents of the state. It's also the impacts on the environment are terrible. So look at all this together and begin somewhere. Begin somewhere which is likely to cause least resistance, which does not threaten the bureaucrats sitting in the secretariat that my powers are being taken away. Empower them in small steps rather than in one giant step for mankind, which will never happen. As to the other aspects of environment, I think probably Tikender and Mr. Sanan would be more qualified to speak on the subject.
Over to you, Tikender.
But what should I speak? I mean, I don't know. What
So-
is the question?
Oh, the question. Okay, let me just put one more question, which I think is also very, very relevant to you. Which says, how do we actually inspire our politicians in terms of understanding how development should be conceived, and one which is in the interest of people, right?
Okay, so Dr. Anjali, I don't know how to inspire them, but I think through people's movement. No. Why it sounds a little funny, because I was going through the Labour Party manifesto. Okay, and that's very interesting. I mean, when will we reach that stage? Not that that's an ideal stage, to be very honest, but their manifesto stated that any company who is not able to fulfill the so-called green goals for the country will not be allowed to trade in the stock market. Do you hear any time or any kind of that stuff happening in India anytime soon? That doesn't happen here. So to me, I think it's more with, for example, in Kinnaur, Deepak ji and I, we were there in the literature festival. I mean, there's a vibrancy of this no means no. And no means no is not, it's a people's own, it's a full on climate movement now. Nandu Negi ji hails from Kinnaur, he'll be able to tell you. They say we will not allow a single new unit of hydropower electricity. And then they're building layers, layers and layers of what would sustainability mean for Kinnaur. That's fabulous, to be very honest. Then I think there's another form and way in which we have formed some very trivial form of platform in Simla called the Simla Collective, and where we are building a Shimla, some very fancy word, Shimla Vision 2050 for zero emissions. But where we are going back to the students, to people, getting some 10,000 people fill in their forms, trying to seek their opinion. How do they envision Shimla to be, 25 years down the line or 30 years down the line? So I think there will be many layers, but to just imagine and expect it to be happening from, one particular kind of element of political mooring, I think that would be little too naive or little too early to understand, because still, what is the driving force? What are the growth drivers in Himachal? All said and done, the same growth drivers, which are in complete contradiction to the larger question of climate change, happens to be dominating and will be dominating for another 5 to 10 years. But
Correct.
having said that, let me just one more minute. I mean, how do we, as an individual, or I create a hypothetical question to myself and to all of you. How do we imagine 25 years henceforth? Because I'm really bubbling with what we did in Kerala. Imagine the question of housing, the question of jobs, because the jobs are not going to be, and that's where Shukla Saab was like right on, because when my generation was growing up in Himachal, the only direction that my generation and my previous generation had is you study and you'll get a government job. Okay. Of course, the previous one was they will get 100% government job. But now, after today or henceforth, 25 years down the line, what would be the nature of jobs? Most of the jobs, you may not be requiring a habitat. You may be working from home. So if you will be working from home, then how do we understand the Himalayan ecosystem to be providing this space where we can, like, I mean, this Shukla Sahab, I mean, I really like that the panchayats should be, because these are definitely going to grow. So, I think that reimagining of what Kirti Bhai said, cities. So cities, Kirti Bhai, in Himalayan ecosystem would mean the entire Himalayan stuff. Because the moment you have a road, you have a car, you have a urban consciousness coming. People will start fighting on the road. So, so I think that reimagining is required. That hypothetical question that I've raised to myself, and of course to every one of us, that how do we visualize 25 years henceforth? Like we knew when Dr. Parmar was building the state, he knew he would carry, bags of apple, and he transformed the entire Himachal. And I said how by massive social stimulus and of course shifting agriculture from to horticulture. Now we can say whether something was right or something is wrong, but he completely transformed. We do not know right now what would this transformation would be, and how do we imagine? Would it just be limited to the market forces, or would there be some kind of engagement of the people or the community or various sections of the society in reclaiming these spaces and building their futures for 25 years? I think it's not easy, honestly speaking.
Yeah,
But
totally
one
hear
departure,
you.
100% sure. One departure is the government cannot provide jobs to anyone. It's a completely new realm, new area that we have to start. And that's because I was leading the growth drivers in Kerala. I can tell you, we've given growth, some clusters, etc., etc. Of course, that's a different, because we took 2 full years with some 10 studies being done. But I think we need that. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Tikender. In the interest of time, and we just have 7 minutes left, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just ask Mr. Sanan, Pratibha, and Nandu Negi to take 2 minutes each and 1.5 minutes each to just respond to the overall conversation, your final words, and then we will close the session. Over to you, Mr. Sanan.
Thank you, Dr. Anjali. I mean, there's not much one can add. It's been very rich, and I think a lot of ground has been covered, and most of the points have been made. I can just say it's, at one level, it's very disheartening that what we are facing is not something which is going to be sorted out by any great action suddenly. It's quite obvious that we are in a jam, we are in soup, we are not getting out of it very easily. What can we do? We could keep hoping for that serendipitous moment when someone will suddenly wave a magic wand and transform all rules, regulations, attitudes, norms, by leading from the top and saying, I want to change everything, and society will follow. I think we all recognize that is a far cry. I think what we really need to do is keep having conversations. Lots more conversations bottom up, conversations top down. We always have had. Need lots more conversations, ground level, need to have many more sessions. And they can be diverse. They need to be plural. They need to have lots of elements coming in from different perspectives. And I think that is where our hope lies, that we'll be able to develop as the questions posed. Then we'll may be able to develop a consciousness which is able to impact policymaking, which is able to impact the larger question of where we want to go. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pratibha, 1 minute, 1.5 minutes.
Anjali, as everybody has pointed out, it's not just for the government or the policymakers or the law enforcing agencies that we look towards. Realizing that the threat is for real. Each one of us living here must realize that, we must do our bit. I mean, as you were talking about the Panchayati Raj institutions being given more power, the problem is that the government is giving it, but people themselves resist norms being imposed on them. So the awakening has to come at, the village level, and every individual has to realize that it is for his or her own safety and well-being. It can't be thrust upon. And so the awakening has to come from the grassroots level, from the people itself. Only then there can be a difference, in the approach.
Thank you. Thank you, Pratibha, for bringing that up. Mr. Negi, over to you. You are muted. You're muted.
So I hope your electricity is back.
Yeah, yeah. Firstly, I'm extremely apologetic about the halfway breaking of the presentation because of the electrical shortage. But nonetheless, I think whatever little I could present in, I did the best I could. But as said that I think probably what is most important in today's date is to really educate the younger generation. How do you motivate them and how do you bring them into the main limelight, either through the education policies or the administration or the government takes initiative to awaken the younger generation, because they are the ones who are the future of the country, and they are the ones who actually have to look into their own neighborhoods more carefully and see the sensitivity of what climate change is bringing in. Unless until we expose them more and more, I think no amount of education to any of the grown people will not make any difference. It's the youngsters who are the next driving force for the country. And I think all the policies and all the systems, plus whatever is happening around in their own communities, unless we start addressing them at their level, making them a part of daily realization that what climate change and what daily changes are happening within and around us, unless and until we make them aware of it and see them taking it through this journey, only then it is possible to have a comprehensive way of looking at things improving in coming times. So I think it's bringing in the real issues into their domain, whether it is administratively taken or politically taken up. I mean, some action has to be taken at their level. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for these very invigorating conversations. I think the videos will be shared. We hope to carry forward this conversation and do some more deep thinking around it. Kirti, over to you for the last words, and then we will call it a.
No, thank you. It's been a very rich conversation and very remarkably kind of pertinent, in terms of present context. Therefore, I don't want to come back at all on the conversation that went on. I just wanted to make a small little a design point, about this webinars. One thing that we had, I'd ask whether we should be doing one webinar of few more. And Anjali, you yourself suggested that, I think let's see how the first one goes, and then I think, we'll take a direction. And Shukla Sahib had suggested that it would be a good idea to have a statewide sort of design, I think, where we can get people to come and talk about them. So I'm not seeking an answer, but I just wanted some views on this because I'm personally very keen that this has been very rich discussion. I think we got to kind of take it further, bring in more people, more thought processes, and in fact find ways to no conversation is good enough in terms of starting action, but I think bring it to a level where idea level we are much richer than what we are today. So that's my question to everyone, all the 5 panelists, and you, Anjali, as well.
Thank you. Kirti, are we trying to answer this question right away, or maybe we can reflect on it and.
We don't have to give an answer, but I think you've got to indicate which because this is an ongoing process, and I think now that we have started looking at hill states, I would want to continue the momentum in terms of other places. If there's an agreement, I think I look upon myself as an outsider, and you are the one who insider in the sense that you know what the issues are. Tikender Saab, Negi Saab, Shukla Saab, Deepak Saab, all of you, Pratibha ji as well. So if I hear a word from you, I think we'll be able to kind of build upon it subsequently.
We can get back to you on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I would say the same thing. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, and thanks, Kirti, for bringing this initiative together. Thank you to all my panelists. I think we really had some good discussions, and we hope to come back to you, to the people who joined the webinar, spared their time, and hopefully this was a meaningful conversation for everybody, and hopefully we'll continue this.
Anjali, can I take half a minute?
Sure, please.
The two things. One is this, that we had just there before a webinar on the development challenges of Nagpur city. And it was a crowded sort of a platform. There were 11 speakers in just 2 hours, almost double what we had. But the way it developed and the way things happened, an idea came that, they would kind of put together 50 suggestions to improve conditions of planning and living in Nagpur. And of course, they're also setting up a whole new organization. They wrote to me today that, that this particular occasion was something that led them to kind of do something like this. We're also doing, and I think, white papers based on 3 webinars we had on the municipal finance. And I just would like to ask, and this is a very mature, very senior group, whether something like 25 points in terms of what we should do with the hill states or something, can we think of putting something together as an output of this exercise? If more of these webinars happen after that, or based on what happened today?
I don't know. I, of course, wait for my panelists to also respond. But I think one of the things that I would like to say is that let's have this conversation offline. Let's see whether we want to do more webinars on this, and then take a call. Definitely, if we are having more webinars which are running across different hill states, the conversations will be much more richer, and it will be easier to put up, or more richer 25 points that can emerge. So let's take that call first and then come back on this question.
Okay, that's well said. And then my last word of thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was wonderful. I know you're all very busy and that you made time, I think, in a short time that was available to you. And we at INHAF are deeply grateful to you for this wonderful session that we had. Thank you very much. And we look forward to your advice and guidance in terms of, the second webinar, the third webinar, and what do we do in terms of output. So thank you very much to each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good night.
you. Thank
Good
you
night,
so
Ji.
much.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.